All right, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Menlo Park Fire Protection District Board meeting. It is April 9th, 2024, and we are starting right in time at 7 p.m. And we'll start out with the roll call.
Director Bernstein?
Present.
Director Bloom?
Present.
Director Jones?
Here.
Director Crowley? Present. Director Solano?
Here.
Okay, next is Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. It sounds good. All right, and then we'll open it up for public comment number 1 for anything that is not on our agenda.
We have no public comments.
Public comment in the room. Okay, we will move on to the report of our fire chief.
Thank you, Director Bloom, members of the board, and members of the public and our staff that are here or watching. Happy to share with you our April fire chief's report and the goings on there. I know it looks like in there on all my notes here. It's we have had a lot going on, so excited to share some updates with you. First of all, facilities update, and I won't steal anything from the facilities report that Director Jones is going to give us later, but we did meet on March 25th with our architect. We are meeting every 3 to 4 weeks. I will share that he's got some site maps and some elevations going, and we're hopeful to share that with both the facilities committee and the board. Our target is kind of June or July to be able to share it with the board. I will also say thank you for allowing us to engage a real estate agent. We did get a no on that one property that we were interested in the possibility of. So it was at least helpful from that perspective to get a firm in. And then we'll also hopefully use this agent to get a value in another 2 properties over there at 170 in the Yellow House. Recruitment and hiring update, I just wanted to share that we have hired a new mechanic, and he has started with us, and his name is Hector Munguia, and it's nice we have acquired him from the city of San Jose. He's been working in their heavy equipment unit there. Yeah. Oh, again. So, and what's really nice is Hector's a local young man that grew up in North Fair Oaks and went to MA High School, and so he's really excited to be back serving the fire district in the community that he grew up in. So, nice return to home for Hector. Some other items to update you on the community engagement unit. A number of things have been going on. They held a Listos class, that's an emergency preparedness class taught in Spanish. 2 of our Spanish-speaking CERT members partnered with Listos organization to help us provide that class. Their unit also was present at the Firefighters Association Easter egg hunt. I may as well touch on that now. That was on Saturday, March 28th over at Burgess Park. We used to partner with the city of Menlo Park. They had a spring celebration the following weekend. The attendance at this was spectacular. I actually had forgot about it, and I heard some kind of mechanical siren going off as I was walking to the Safeway from my house, and oh yeah, it's the Easter egg hunt. And I went over there, and it was, I think, 2,500 people. It was wow. A lot of eggs, just a lot of happy faces. It was really wonderful. You know, pictures with the Easter Bunny, lots of little booths, lots of preparedness booths, and really a wonderful community event. I saw a number of council members from Menlo Park, and city manager was there, and a lot of our staff. So that was great. The engagement unit also with CERT members set up rehab at the rescue site. That's for live fire training. We've started doing firefighter rehab events. The plan being, if we ever have a significant event, we can call our CERT members out to do firefighter rehab. So they're doing that with some of our planned training, which is really it's great for our crews to get to interact with CERT members and really fun for the CERT members to get to interact with the crews too. We also participated in the City of Menlo Park's Spring Fest, which just was this past Saturday. And also they had a booth at Menlo College to educate students about emergency preparedness in the fire district. And also Chief Johnson presented a fire safety talk for about an hour and a half with the ADOT meeting this past Saturday. So great. Data and analytics, you have the most recent update. We're still using December data there as we fine tune it. I just wanted to share with you the latest report. One of the questions that had been was we had an unusual number of incidents that were shown in the unincorporated area. And what we discovered is those were mutual, a number of them are mutual aid calls. So we're still working on fine tuning that before I present you with new information that way. We're just comparing the same information month over month until we know that we have it right now.
Chief, I don't understand what the comment. You said their number were a mutual aid call.
Oh, sure. We have, I will tell you specifically, on page 5 of the report, where we have this bar chart here. Previously, that orangish area down at the bottom of the chart was being included as calls into our unincorporated areas, and they weren't making sense. Right now, what they are, they're classified as others, and those are our mutual aid responses into other jurisdictions, whether it's Woodside or Redwood City, or even further, or possibly out onto the Dumbarton Bridge if it's in Fremont's jurisdiction. So that's the fire marshal safety pop-up is ongoing. Our last one was at Pete's Coffee on Santa Cruz, and tomorrow there is another one at 3 p.m. at Cardenas Market in East Palo Alto. Feel free to stop by, and John will share all kinds of great information. The Easter egg hunt I had already talked about. Lions Club recognition. I went a few Fridays ago on March 22nd to Foster City. We had 3 of our members that were recognized by the Lions Club. They were Tyler Eskowski for service, for him mostly taking over the toy drive. Alex Perlstein was recognized for valor related to the Madeira fire and a victim rescue. Captain Neely Hunt was recognized for heroism related to the Beresford fire and an aggressive interior search, even though there was no victims. So nice event. It was a law enforcement and fire recognition event. So that was great. And those were, I think all 3 of those people were nominated by this newest battalion chief, Scott Blanford, in a senior moment. Then the next item, we, as you all know, we had that wonderful, first 30 minutes at our last board meeting, recognizing the first responders in the community, and Jules. That following Saturday, after that, Jules came over with her brother and her mom and dad and had pancakes here at the fire station with the actual crews that were there. And it was, so everybody that had responded was on duty. We made her favorite pancakes with chocolate chips and lots of bacon, and even the AMR crew came over with the paramedic and the EMT that were on. So yeah, very special. They were obviously emotional and choked up to get to see that. And Jules is a ball of fire, even though she apparently had been sick. I think she threw up in the car on the way over here, so she was kind of out of sorts, but that's not the real Jules, what we saw there. She was all over the place, charming, energetic, and they took her on a ride in the fire truck and took her fire hat. It was really neat event, especially for those 5 members of ours plus our battalion chief, and then the 2 folks from AMR. Great. Fire Academy graduation. You see these 2 engines out here today. That the entire academy was over here training out here. Fire Academy graduation is slated for Saturday, May 11th. I don't have all the details yet. I know that's Mother's Day weekend, which is not a great day or time to have it, but I will share with the board the time and place and an invitation to you for you to attend if you so desire. Incidents of, before I do that, I have a couple other things that I threw on here. We have begun the process every year. The Firefighters Association sponsors a rebuilding event. This year's house is on Ivy Drive in Menlo Park. And I know they were out there this past Saturday. I know you were the director. So
Monday.
Was it a Monday work?
Yeah.
Okay. So, that was just, yesterday. There's going to be a couple work days out there with I think a barbecue in April. We also had kind of a Menlo Park Fire Department opening day event with the San Francisco Giants last Friday. Even though I'm a Dodgers fan, I wore a San Francisco Giants shirt and attended. And they won. So, trying to make sure none of those pictures get back to my old friends down south. We also had an outreach event at the EPA Academy. It was a kind of a job fair and community outreach for some of our different programs, which was really successful. And one other thing, I just on a personal note, and I'll send the board a note. A week from tomorrow, I'm going to be heading out of town on a 2-week trip to Nepal, which is, I will be truly off the grid. And so Chief Coyle will be filling the shoes in my absence, but I'll send you an email as that goes closer. And finally, the one incident of significance was down in the Bellhaven neighborhood. It was a commercial structure fire on the 1200 block of Chrysler Drive. Chief McDonald and I were actually doing station visits and went down to watch. A pretty good fire going in the attic. Sprinklers were going off in the attic. They made a good stop. It was a challenge for them to make access and get in. The damage to the building really wasn't so important. The property manager came out and explained that they were going to be actually demoing the building within the next month. So it was a pretty significant incident for us. That concludes my chief's report.
Okay. So I just have one question for you, which is on the data. I know you're still tweaking and getting the data as accurate state. When do you think you'll be at a stage where you'll be able to talk about things that are actionable based on the data?
I think it'd be reasonable. I'm just thinking about our May or June. I think our June meeting, and we can schedule some time to actually go over the report and engage with some questions, and begin having a conversation also about establishing some district metrics that we can set.
Okay. Thank you.
I wanted to ask about the call of the commercial building.
Yes.
Have they determined what the cause of it was yet?
I need to talk to Bob and see. I'm not aware.
I mean, given that it's going to be demoed, I just wondered if it's possible it was us.
It's, I suppose it's possible. I think it's unlikely because it was in a really concealed space in the attic, and it would have been a challenge for a human to get in there and start it. So, yeah, it was a completely enclosed attic space located at pretty high. So, but I'll let you know. We'll check with investigator. Was that Bob?
Yeah, most likely like a rodent chewed on wires. So it's big.
Over here. Rats and wires.
Any other questions for the chief?
Can I just follow up?
Sure.
If it's a vacant building, wouldn't they normally just turn the power off, or do they leave it on for like burglar alarm stuff?
Usually that's what it is. So they still have to leave some of their systems active. But I don't know how long it's been vacant. I don't know if it was vacant a week or a year or so.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the chief on the board? Any public comment on the chief's report?
No public comments.
All right, we'll move on to the consent calendar. Does anybody want to pull anything from the consent calendar?
I'd like to make a motion.
You gonna pull something over?
I said, yeah, I could go.
Okay,
I'll second that.
okay. So we have a motion to approve the consent calendar in a second. I guess we don't need any discussion, we're just approving it, so.
Yeah.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that was approved unanimously, and we can move on to the regular agenda. The first one being accepting the annual comprehensive financial report, related supplemental reports for the fiscal year ended June 30th, 2023. And I can certainly state that the finance committee did review that and recommended acceptance of that. I'll turn it over to Elaine, I suspect.
Good evening, everyone. I'm just going to give a little background on the engagement that we had for fiscal year 2022-23 before I turn it over to our auditor. So basically, we had 3 engagements for fiscal year 2022-23. The first one is the annual external financial audit. So we actually completed that and we issued the annual comprehensive financial report in December. And that's for the fiscal year ended June 30, 2023. And the document is actually posted on our website for your reference, but I also provided physical copies if that's easier for you to see. I was also provided physical copies today. And then overall, the district actually received an unmodified or clean opinion, so with no findings for fiscal year 2022-23 financial statements. The second one is the single audit. So just a refresher, so the single audit is required for all non-federal entities that receives and expends more than $750,000 of federal funds within a fiscal year. So the report was issued last March, and again, it's with a modified opinion citing no reporting compliance deficiency. And then the last one is an agreed upon procedures with the calculation of the district's appropriation limit. And the results again is no exceptions noted. So now I'm going to turn it over to our auditor, Joe Escobar. He's here to present the audit results for fiscal year 22-23, as well as the governance letter for matters that is required to be communicated to the board of directors as part of your oversight responsibility for financial risk process.
Thank you, Elaine. Can you guys hear me?
We can.
Brilliant. Okay. I have a presentation shared as well. Can you guys?
We can see that as well.
Brilliant. Okay, thanks. So yeah, I met with the finance committee on the 2nd and presented basically the same thing that I'll be presenting today to you all. Our audit was performed consistent with government auditing standards issued by the Comptroller General of the United States, includes a report on internal control over compliance and a report on the schedule of expenditures of federal awards required by uniform guidance, as well as a report on applying agreed upon procedures related to the Article 8B appropriations limit calculation. Our responsibility. As auditors, we are responsible for remaining independent, meeting our ethical responsibilities, and obtaining sufficient audit evidence to determine that our basis for opinions is appropriate. Management is responsible for the preparation of the financial statements in accordance with accounting principles generally accepted in the United States, and for the design, implementation, and maintenance of internal control relevant to the preparation and fair presentation of the financial statements that are free from material misstatement. Our responsibility is to evaluate these controls, obtain reasonable determinations consistent with audit standards, and provide assurance over the presentation of the financial statements. In our opinion, the financial statements present fairly in all material respects the financial position of the district as of June 30, 2023, and the respective changes in financial position for the year ended in accordance with accounting principles generally accepted in the United States. We are also pleased to state that during our audit, we did not identify any deficiencies in internal control that we considered to be material weaknesses. Furthermore, no instances of non-compliance or other matters that are required to be reported under government auditing standards were noted as it relates to provisions of laws, regulations, contracts, and grant agreements. In our report on compliance for the major federal program, our opinion is that the district complied in all material respects with the compliance requirements for the year ended June 30, 2023. No material weaknesses or significant deficiencies in internal control over compliance were identified. We performed agreed upon procedures on the appropriations limit calculation for the district. No exceptions were noted as a result of our procedures. As aforementioned, as auditors, we are responsible for remaining independent, meeting our ethical responsibilities, and obtaining sufficient audit evidence to determine that our basis for opinions is appropriate. We have complied with all relevant ethical requirements and performance of our audit regarding independence. The financial statements do include items which we consider to be significant estimates. These estimates are related to pensions, post-employment benefits, self-insurance incurred but not reported claims, and allowances for doubtful accounts. The pension, post-employment, and self-insurance estimates are all based on actuarial assumptions. Allowance for doubtful accounts is based on historical experience. As such, in your review of the financial statements, we believe that footnotes 6 and 8 are the most sensitive disclosures relating to the presentation of these amounts. These disclosures are sensitive accounting estimates affecting the financial statements of the district and are based on usage of actuarial specialists. We evaluated the key factors and assumptions used by the actuary and determined that the estimates are reasonable in relation to the basic financial statements taken as a whole. Additionally, note 2 describes the district's investment portfolio, including certain risks required by the accounting standards for disclosure. There were no uncorrected misstatements. The district did not find it necessary to consult with any other accountants regarding auditing and accounting matters as it relates to the district. We encountered no significant difficulties in dealing with management relating to performance of the audit. There were no disagreements with management. Elaine and Long were extraordinarily helpful in ensuring a quality audit. We appreciate their assistance in completion of our work. This concludes my report.
Any questions for Joe?
Yeah, I wanted to ask, I don't know if you have our page numbers, but it's on page 86 of our packet, which is page 3 of your auditor's report regarding the procedure.
Page 3 of this report is page 89 of the packet.
Right. There must be several page 3s, because if you go backward a little bit to page 86, you'll find another page 3. Sorry.
Yeah, there's several
page 89?
attachments to the staff report.
There's a spreadsheet.
There's 3.
No, it's like a spreadsheet. Yeah, it's some charts, a chart.
So it's basically page 86.
Page 86, yeah.
So the GAN appropriation limit schedule?
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Look, I have 2 questions on it. First, with regard to the calculation factor, the number 1, the fact that it's 0.99, is this telling us that the district's population declined over the year?
So the district has the ability to use a few different factors. They have the ability to use the counties or the cities. And I'm not exactly certain without going back and reviewing which one was used. So I can't, I'd have to look at that.
We use the county.
Yeah, but I'm just asking, if it says 0.99, does that mean the population actually went down?
Yes.
Okay, I'm just, it surprised me. I didn't know that our population went down. But my main question is on C here. And I don't understand, it talks about the annual adjustment decrease. And I'm not clear what it is that decreased.
Sorry, which number are you inquiring about?
Well, I'm looking at letter C. If you look down the left-hand margin, annual adjustment decrease. And then there's a number of 9.6 million. But I'm trying to figure out what decreased. If anything, it seems to me like the adjustment increased. See, number 3, it says adjustment factor is now 1.06. That seems to me an increase. I just don't understand what it is that decreased.
Yes. That does appear to be an increase. I think the arithmetic foots correctly. The word probably should just be increase.
It should be increased. I mean, that makes sense.
It's added to the total for line F includes it. So it would be an increase going from the 147 in 2021-22, increase of 9.6 million, leading you to the 22-23 number of 156.
Oh, thanks. That's really my only substantive question. Thank you.
I noticed that also, and I thought, well, maybe it should have been an increase or a decrease, because that's that on that column. It's either an increase or a decrease, and so it was an increase.
It's a language question.
I
know what you're saying.
Yeah. That's why I justified it in my mind. I saw it.
So do you, Elaine and Joe, do you agree that it should be stated as an increase?
It should be an increase, yes.
Okay.
That could have.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, can we get a motion to accept the annual comprehensive financial report, subject to the one edit of item C, the word decrease to be changed to increase?
So moved.
All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, so unanimously approved with the adjustment.
I just want to thank the staff for just some great work, and and I think it's a testament that Hyundai, who doing all of this, thought that you and friends did great good work with the entire team. So thank you.
Yeah, I agree. It's always nice when we hear the auditors confirm that our staff is helpful and even work with. So, Joe, we appreciate you sharing that perspective, and we're certainly glad to hear that. Do we have any public comment on that at all?
We had no public comment.
Okay, so we can move on to item 7. This is to review and Joe's dropping off. Okay, review and discuss the district's fiscal year 24-25 preliminary budget full-time equivalent staffing level. Just so everybody knows, the way this is going to work is this is our first look at the preliminary budget. We will approve preliminary budget at the May meeting, so we have another roughly 30 days for any kind of commentary and or discussion for the May meeting, and then at the June meeting we'll actually approve the final budget for next fiscal year. So today is just the first look at it. And on that, I will turn it over to, I suspect, Elaine that's going to kick that off as well.
Again, good evening, everyone. Good evening, directors. So, again, this is the first preview of our budget for the fiscal year 24-25. So I'm going to start with just a little bit of a refresher again. So for the budget, again, as everyone knows, we have 3 major funds, basically the general fund, the CIP fund, and the special revenue. So all of the budgets are included in this packet. So I'm going to start over with the general fund. So for the general fund revenue budget, so overall for fiscal year 24-25, we are proposing $89.7 million of revenue, which is basically based on best estimates, which is a more realistic approach. So the foundation of our projections is based on historical and estimated actual numbers. So that's what the whole foundation of the projections for the revenues. So I'm just gonna emphasize, I think, three things for our revenue budget. First is, the secured property tax, because that's, the largest source of funding or revenue source that we have for the district. So for secured property tax, our projection is based on the preliminary assessment roll provided by the county. So that's, again, 4%. So what we did is, we actually take 4%, we take the estimated actuals for fiscal year 23-24, plus the 4% revenue growth that we're expecting for next fiscal year. The second one is the ERAP. So for the excess ERAP or the ERAP rebate, again, this year or the next fiscal year, it's going to be again based on our best estimates. So what we did is we applied the same tax growth or revenue growth for our ERAP. So it's again the estimated actuals for fiscal year 2024 plus 4%. However, we actually took off like 10% from our estimate to account for the governor's proposal to include or explicitly include the charter schools and the distribution of the dollars for ERAP. So with that uncertainty, to account for that uncertainty, we actually deem or staff deems that 10% of that would be uncollectible. So we don't really know how much how much is the fiscal impact going to be for our ERAP or for our excess ERAP. We just, we talked to the county about that, and they will do an analysis once it's, already, final or proposed. So two things here for the ERAP, because, there's variable factors, there's a lot of factors to consider in terms of, the ERAP distribution and the excess ERAP that, we're receiving. One part of it is for sure, the revenue growth, basically, which is mostly secured property tax. That's why we included that 4% as part of our projection for our estimate next year. But another part of it is the local school funding data, which we have little to no information at all. So again, to basically be prudent and to account for that uncertainty, we just give that 10% to be uncollectible for the next fiscal year.
Which number did the 10% come from?
The 10% is just, it's just our estimate. Basically, there's no really basis on that.
Which line item is what I'm trying to...
Oh, what line item? On the report itself?
Table 3,
I'm trying to figure out.
Table 3.
I think it's on page 104, table 3.
Yeah, table 3.
Yeah, but which line item again?
The one that says ERAP rebate.
It's the rebate?
Yes, it's the rebate.
Okay, I'm sorry, that's what I was asking. Thank you.
So those are the major things basically for the revenue. And then the last thing that I would like to emphasize is the use of money and property, which is mostly consists of the interest. So as you know, we implemented our investment strategy and portfolio last August or July of 2023. So the expectation for next year, we have been getting like signals from the Feds that they're gonna cut down the rates, right? So what we did is we took the average balance that we think that's gonna be invested for the next fiscal year, and we applied a reduced rate. Because right now we're earning like about 5.5% for our portfolio, but for the next fiscal year we're just anticipating or we're projecting about 4%. So that's basically the basis of our revenue budget for the interest, which is about 4.9 million it could be. So that's for the revenue. Again, those are the three things that I wanted to emphasize on the revenue budget. For the general fund expenditure budget, we continue to implement a zero-based budgeting methodology. That means instead of applying a certain percentage for our budget, our adopted budget last year, we actually went ahead and start from scratch. Scratch meaning your base is really zero, and we reviewed like each line item basically on the proposals for each of the program, just to ensure that we have an appropriate budget for the next fiscal year. So overall, for fiscal year 24-25 for the general fund, we are proposing $71 million. This is a again 1.6 million increase from last year's budget, and just to take note as well, the fixed assets, as you can see, it's zero. for the general fund. So last year, there was a comment about trying to consolidate all of our capital budget and our capital assets. So that's what we are doing now for the next fiscal year. So for the fixed assets, although it's zero, you can actually, when we go to the CIP budget, we would see the budget for our fixed assets in our capital improvements project fund. So again, that is the main purpose is really to be consistent, and to be able to track and monitor all of our capital assets in one fund. So for the salaries, there's a $452,000 increase. Again, this is basically due to the general wage increase and anticipated performance and step increase for the next fiscal year. So this is already like set in stone. Basically, this is based on the approved agreements and the approved labor agreements. We actually implemented a new budget software for the next fiscal year for our budgets for salaries, actually for all of our proposed budget. So that means our calculation of our salaries now for all of our employees is going to be more accurate going forward. That's why you can probably tell that there's only a 1.6% increase from our total budget last year, and that is because again we are now calculating it more accurately based on the anniversary date for the performance, the COLAs that's applied to the salaries for each groups. Same thing with the stipends. Again, these are basically based on the approved labor agreements. I would probably go over to the overtime last, but for the retirement, this is the biggest increase for our budget for our expenditures for the general fund. There is actually a 2.3 million increase or 20.7 increase from last year's budget. And this is actually due to quite a few things. Thing number one is last board meeting, there's a consensus from the board to actually do a 10-year soft fresh start or virtual fresh start for our CalPERS unfunded liability. So that's basically what the major increase is all about, because from the initial years, there's gonna be additional larger contributions during the early years, but in the long run, we're gonna save roughly about $12.3 million for our CalPERS unfunded liability. So that's one thing, and the other thing is for the fiscal year 22 valuation, which is the basis for the contribution rates and the funded liability for next year. As you know, CalPERS had a negative 6.1% negative return. So that actually increases our required unfunded liability that we are paying every year. So those are the major two things that's causing the increase of that $2.3 million. And then the other two are just slight increases in the contribution rates. And of course, the increase in the pensionable salaries due to, general wage and COLA increases. And then for materials and supplies and contracts services, there's just the general increase in the cost, like for inflation. And then we also are anticipating a few more needs for materials and supplies and contract services due to the expansion of the programs, especially the community engagement and resiliency program and the wellness program. For the fixed assets, again, it's zero for the general fund, but in the CIP fund, you would see that there's a 1.3 million budget for the fixed assets. And then the contingency reserve, we kept it at $200,000. Again, this is only gonna be used only if we don't have sufficient funding for any of our programs. So as of this date, we haven't really spent it. But next year, this is just for again a reserve, just in case there's unanticipated needs for any of our programs. And then for the operating transfers, this is basically the excess between our projected revenue and expenditure. So that's $18 million. So from that $18 million, 5.5 million of that total transfer will cover the fixed assets and construction projects laid out in the CIP fund budget, which I will go over shortly. And then the remaining funds, or the remaining $12.5 million, will be kept at the CIP as a reserve. And then lastly, for the overtime, there's an increase in overtime budget. Again, it's related to the increase in the general wage and additional anticipated overtime costs in the upcoming fiscal year due to some initiatives that we're planning to do for the next fiscal.
Elaine, before we move on, if I could, especially since you mentioned the overtime, I just want to address three things that Elaine has talked about. Two of them have addressed issues that have been brought up before on the board, and hopefully the board recognizes that. The first is just the increased accuracy of the revenue projections versus prior years. I think that's come up, we've been in past years been very conservatively estimating revenues, and now Elaine has, we believe, pretty accurately estimated the revenues, and as a result, when you look at table 2 on page 103, you can see the increase in our revenue budget over the prior years is $14.5 million. Right, that's what that's reflecting is that we have realistic revenue projections this year. That will be a one-time anomaly, so to speak, because in the future, we're going to, the increases should be in that $5 million range moving forward. But I think that addresses something that's been a conversation in past budget hearings, is us accurately trying to reflect our revenues. The other thing that Elaine had mentioned was us removing fixed assets from the operating budget. So again, what you're going to need to do is just bear with us this year, as it kind of still throws things off a little bit as we're comparing a year of 0 to a prior year of 3.5 million. But the goal is to remove those from the operating budget so we can really compare apples to apples year over year and remove those one-time numbers out of there. So that was that item. And then I just wanted to share with you again, because I know it's always a point of interest and concern, is the overtime budget. And so, as Elaine was talking about, I just wanted to share, the general position.
What page you referring to?
On the overtime budget, it's just a line item there for table 7. Overtime is the $8.8 million in table 7 on page 111. So I know, I'll wait till you get that. I know there's not a lot of detail there, but I wanted to share with you a little bit about that $500,000 increase. So generally in all of the budget hearings, my position has been to kind of hold the line and not approve any additional overtime. Out of our 29 programs, 18 of those programs were either held at last year or reduced their overtime numbers. We had a couple of items in the increase. I'm just going to go through quickly and share with you what the increases were that I approved. One was in the IT section. We had a $15,000 increase because we're planning on having a one-time cost related to Office 365 migration. So that I'm just trying to share with you, at times when I say, okay, more is approved. Water rescue went up 19,500. We have some new training requirements for currency. So it's kind of a mandate. The fire suppression overtime budget went up by $324,000. That really, as Elaine was talking about, is truly just related to the pay increases that have been granted and step raises. And all of that overtime is all contractually obligated. When we talk about suppression, it's those things I had talked about previously on my chief's report. It's the PTO, the personal time off, it's workers' comp, it's overtime related to bereavement, and a number of things that we really have little to no control over. The training budget, overtime budget went up by $60,000 again. Same thing related to those COLAs and the contractual MOU obligation. In EMS, in the EMS budget, I approved an extra $107,000 in overtime as our local EMS agency initiated a new requirement for all of our paramedics to, they had waived the requirements for PHTLS. I can't tell you what that is, but it's a one-time mandated cost for all of our paramedics to go through this training. And it can't really be done on duty, so we have to pay them overtime to do it. And then cadets went up by 14,000. That for us is we are increasing our outreach into our cadet program. It's our best way to connect with the community and recruit a diverse workforce. And then we also had 72,000 in the wellness program. This really is related to the wellness efforts that we started last year. The program enhancements really here is time that's going to be spent on training our new peer counselors as we move from, it's critical incident stress management 2.0 as they call it. So anyway, that's really what makes up that $496,000 increase. There's a number of decreases, a number of things being held. Yes, Director Burns.
Please finish.
I'm done, so I'm happy to answer questions.
Let me be clear, I'm very happy in general with how the budget's presented. I think one is early, here it is April and we're looking at it, which I think is a positive. Second, I think the revenue estimates with one exception are more accurate and feel better. And I used some negative words when I discussed it a year ago, but I think that's positive. And I like the idea that you put the fixed assets taken out of the general fund because they don't belong there. But I really want to point out one thing that I mentioned it last year, I still think it's a flaw, and it is on page 111, and it relates to the overtime budget here. And I just think we're looking at this very wrong, even though there's some right things in here. If we look at the overtime budget here in table 7, in 22-23, we spent 6.2 million in overtime. What I objected to last year is that we budgeted 8.4 million, a $2.2 million increase. Now, to your credit, we didn't spend that. We only spent 6.7 million. I say only, it's still a lot of money, but I mean, I think you held the line on it. But now I'm looking at the budget for 24-25 is 8.9 million. And when it shows the increase, it says, oh, it's less than $500,000. But it's because it's comparing the preliminary budget with last year's budget, which was a terrible budget. If we look at it compared to the actual for this year, we believe this year we're going to spend 6.7 million. And we're budgeting more than $2 million more in overtime. It's not $500,000. It's $2 million. And it seems to me that when we budget, we should think, well, what did we spend? How much more do we need to spend this year? Not how much did we budget last year, because I don't think last year's budget is relevant to it. I know people said, oh yes, it's really the most relevant thing, but I think those people don't know what they're talking about. What's relevant is what we spend on this. And so, in a sense, I'm not even complaining about the overtime budget. I'm complaining about the presentation of it, that it's really over $2 million increase. And talking about $15,000 for Microsoft Office is not going to get us to $2 million.
And sure, and I appreciate it. And we've had this conversation. I think this is our 3rd year with that. Yeah, I mean, generally as we budget, we compare budget to budgets. When we're doing that, I will say in our budget sessions, we're looking at prior year actuals, and a lot of the reductions in the overtime budget that I talked about came from programs not using it, and so we're gently reducing those numbers. And I had even set aside in district administration about $250,000 in overtime that it basically allows me to reduce those budgets and go, don't worry, if you end up bumping up against them, come see me, I can give you one. That said, you're right. Yes, there's a delta between our estimated actuals and the current budget of, like you said, it's a little over $2 million. And you'll find just with us, and it's very typical, is we are, we conservatively overestimate our overtime costs because we don't want to hit up against our appropriations limits. And there are a number of unknowns in there that we just, it's estimations based on, we don't know what our workers' comp vacancies are gonna be, we don't know what our deployment overtime is gonna be. Those are the variables. Just know this, that even though the budget is high and we're gonna probably year after year have budget savings in overtime, we don't spend to the overtime budget. We spend what's necessary to make our department run operationally. And just because there's a big budget number there in the programs where we even have flexibility for it, we hold a pretty tight line on it. So you're right. Year over year, we're going to probably always overestimate our overtime expenses, and at the end of the year, that gets reallocated into whatever the board deems appropriate for UAL or capital projects.
Let me just finish the comment though. I think conceptually it's not a good idea to do that because particularly with overtime, because once budgeted, it's almost an entitlement in a way, and that idea of, I mean, I hear it frequently, well, we're budgeted for it, so, and we're about to spend it. In other words, it's sort of a rationalization for spending it.
You hear it frequently from who?
I hear it frequently when we're approving something, we say, well, let's go ahead and buy that vehicle because it's already budgeted. But that we still may not need it. I mean, what I'm saying to you is the fact that it's in the budget is not a reason for doing it. And I just don't think that it's necessary. And I think you're going to be way under it. I mean, you've already proved that you're under it, you're not stuck. But what we're somehow doing with our staff is they don't want to lose their overtime. And so it makes them nervous. And we don't want to upset the staff. So we keep pushing numbers in there. And then you do a good job of saving the money. I mean, I'm trying to say you're doing the right thing, but I think we're budgeting in the wrong way with that item. So I'll stop there.
I have two, maybe three questions.
Sure.
First one is for Elaine. On the when you start talking about salaries, and I noticed that the 24-25 is at 28, and then the last year was at 26, I think. Yeah, 26. Are we taking into consideration for any new hires for next year at all? Are we good to go on our hiring, and are we anticipating anything like that taking place next year? Or,
for new recruits? No.
New hires, period.
Yeah, and just so you know, and I know we haven't gotten to it yet, we have the same number of FTEs that we had in prior years, and we fully budget for all positions, whether they're filled or not. But there's, I guess what I should say is, if we had some retirements and we hired some more new recruits, it's already budgeted for the year because we've budgeted every position full.
The second question would be, you're looking at, I assume, and I haven't done the percentage of how much the overtime in terms of what it actually got extended, which is 6.7 million. But then still we're budgeting, a few dollars more from the actual budget itself. So my question is in anticipation of not less than what was spent last year, just because of the nature of the personnel that we have currently. Could you say how much would be that the overtime budget is increased in terms of? I know we talked some time before. You said there's transitional time that goes into overtime. Are other? I'm looking at the categories that may cause this increase or overtime budget in terms of what is consist of those categories.
Sure. The increase, if we're talking specifically about that almost $500,000 increase, 60% of that is related to what we call fire suppression. That is those items that we don't have control over. It's whatever kind of time off it might be. And it's that concept that when somebody calls out sick or takes vacation, we fill behind them generally with overtime. So that's that is the overwhelming majority, like I said, 60% of it, and that right there is, we aren't anticipating that the actual number of hours worked of overtime is going up, we're just anticipating that the cost, the salary cost of each hour of overtime is going up by $300,000.
So that category you're talking about it created this dollar amount. My assumption is that you have to start from somewhere, and you're assuming that last year this is what it was, and so the anticipation is for next year it may be in this category again, because of the fact that we don't know really, we can't repeat the same life from last year to the upcoming year. So that's one category. And are there other categories that may increase this dollar amount in terms of overtime potentially?
Sure. I mean, those are the ones that I went through previously when I was talking about the increases.
But I think that the foundation of it though is that, I think what you were saying, you highlighted a lot of small budget amounts, whether it be the IT budget, EMS budget, others. The lion's share of the overtime risk, so to speak, as to what the number is going to be, is completely dependent on our 7x24-hour responders. And the fact that we have to staff the same crews, the right mixture of battalion chiefs, paramedics, captains, engineers. So it's not, I mean, that's the part that you don't really control.
78% of it.
If there's sickness went through the captains, you'd have a whole lot more overtime. If a bunch of paramedics suddenly got sick, you'd have a whole lot more overtime trying to cover all the paramedic shifts. So the reality is the lion's share of the number, you know, last year it's estimated to be 6.7 million. It could hit the 8.2 million this year under the right circumstances, given that the vast majority of our overtime is directly associated with being an unusual organization that says we have to staff specific positions 7x24 hours a day, year round.
So the difference between what it actually was, 6.7 million, and what potentially, I mean, I'm not a math whiz, I don't know what, between what we're asking for, what you're asking for, and what we actually spent is roughly about
A little over $2 million.
A couple million,
Yeah,
of which about a $500,000 is for the overtime costs associated with increased salaries.
So it's about 20% maybe?
Yeah.
So I mean, I know,
Yes.
I don't know if we have an actual policy about, for those conditions, you may have that in your head in terms of, hey, let's just look to try to say there may be this 20% increase or 10% or 15% increase over last year in terms of what we have to spend on it. And if it's not there, you have to come back to the board.
As Director Bloom was indicating, there's a whole number of uncertainties related to that 72% of the overtime, which is why we have a pretty big cushion in our overtime budget. I could certainly shrink it by $2 million, and in all likelihood, I'll be coming back to the board asking for a budget adjustment mid-year.
Right.
The one thing I just want to give you assurances on is there were not, you know, when I went through my list, it was really the program overtime budgets. That's the things that we have control over. And there's not a big giant pot of money there where people are trying to spend it. And the overtime associated with the fire suppression constant staffing is something that they have a contractual right to spend, so to speak, if they want to. And we can't restrict them from from taking PTO or a variety of things. So it's not really susceptible to people, wanting to spend it, but beyond what's allowable within their MOUs. So,
Well, they don't make the decisions as to whether they get overtime or not.
no,
It's not, those decisions are made for them by the command staff.
right. And we don't cushion the rest of our expenditures budget to the degree that we do with overtime. And it's because we have such little control over 72% of the budget. And that's why the cushion's there. And like I said, we are good stewards of the overtime monies here, and so are the supervisors. And at the end of the year, if there's $2 million in savings, the board can direct us, wherever they deem appropriate, but we're tying it up over the course of a year in the form of a budgetary appropriation. And the likelihood of us spending, as you all know, is low-ish, right? But it allows us the ability to be able to do the suppression operations and deal with it uninterrupted.
I think to some extent it's a bit of a no-win situation, because if you try to be too precise on that number that's completely unpredictable, then the complaint from the board will be, well, you're blowing your budget and you're not managing it well when you have to come back, because it'll almost be a retroactive request.
Right.
I already spent it, and so now I need to increase the budget because I've already spent it, which is never
That's
a good practice.
Yeah,
So I think the only valid approach to it is to budget it based on an estimate, knowing that it's 72% of it is not directly controllable by management.
Yeah, and I think having that I don't know what the word is, but having that buffer,
Right, the cushion.
the cushion
Yeah.
of 20%, if that's the number, feels good to me, because I know that, that may happen.
Okay. Is there any other, I know there's more to review. Is there any other discussion on this table? If not, I have just one comment I want to make, unless there's other
I
discussion.
have a comment.
Good.
Go ahead and
Go ahead. Go ahead.
No, it's on a section.
Oh, it's a different section? We're gonna go through the other section, so.
Okay.
So my comment is, I just want to address the commentary by Director Bernstein that last year's budget was a terrible budget. I think that is a mistake to characterize it that way for the community to hear that, because it was actually a budget that was based on reasonable estimates and a budget methodology that the majority of the board approved. The second thing I want to address is the comment that said there was a bunch of people making those decisions that don't understand it. And I would counter that to say that you have 4 other board members that are quite capable in budgeting. And so I'd be careful about those kinds of characterizations. I think they're inaccurate. So on that, we can continue on with the presentation.
Okay, so I'm gonna go over with the next is our CIP budget. So on table 13 of the report, which is the capital improvement projects summary budget. So for our CIP budget, we are actually budgeting a total of $5.5 million. That's the amount that we're proposing for fiscal year 24-25, and it is composed of 2 things. Number one is all of our ongoing construction projects and new project budget requests for the next fiscal year, which is $4.2 million. And the next one is that fixed asset line item budget that we have been previously budgeting under the general fund, and now moving forward, we're going to actually budget it under the CIP fund, and that's the $1.3 million. If you go on table 14 of the report, which is I think page 18 of the report. So this actually summarizes the budget requests for our current projects and new budget requests for our construction projects. So again, this is actually composed of 2 things. So the third to the last column, which says estimated carryover budget. So basically this is what we are thinking that's going to be carried over for the next fiscal year for those projects that are not yet completed. But the overall budget was already approved. This is basically just carrying over what we think is the amount that we're not going to spend, but we're still going to spend in the next fiscal. And then the second to the last column is those are the new project budget requests. So it's either an additional or incremental budget from the already approved projects, or it's a completely new project overall for next fiscal. And again, overall, we are proposing $5.5 million budget for our CIP. And then the last one would be the special revenue fund budget. So basically this is the cooperative agreements, the FEMA cooperative agreements. So since this is actually a cost reimbursement grant, so the revenues and expenditures for this specific fund is always going to be the same. So we are anticipating $1.7 million carryover from our existing USAR cooperative agreements for the next fiscal year. And just some sort of a caveat, so this $1.7 million, this is the estimated remaining balance of the grant. So on the October meeting, once we finalize our actual numbers, we're gonna have to true up our numbers depending on what the actual amounts would be. It could be over that 1.7 million or less than that $1.7 million. But rest assured, we are not spending over the amount that was given to us by the federal government. So again, this is just an estimate, and then we're going to true it up once we have the final or actual numbers.
And Elaine, just a quick question. The actual numbers include a combination of next year's grant plus the carryover funds from probably 2 prior years?
Correct.
Okay.
That's correct. So I think we usually receive our new grant or new agreement, I think September, October timeframe. So that's just in time basically to do an appropriation for the new grant for the next fiscal year. So that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna include that budget adjustment to include that new agreement plus the adjustments to align with the actual carryovers, so the actual remaining balance of the grants for the older agreements. And then lastly, I would say for the FEE, I think this was already mentioned by the chief earlier. So we are not proposing any changes with our full-time employees. It's still gonna be $152. No, $152 full-time employees. So if you see it on attachment A, basically there's just some swings or like offsets between the general fund and the grant funded FEE. So basically we just reallocated some of the charges for those employees or staff that's charging to the grant agreements. But basically it's a wash between the two, so there's no significant impact to the general fund nor the district or grant funded agreement. And then I think that's pretty much it. And then I'd just like to have one final comment. So the comment about the presentation of budget over budget. We've just so Director Burris, it's point well taken. We completely understand where you're coming from. But we actually took a look at what other agencies are doing in terms of the presentation. So from our research, there's only actually very few agencies that actually presents the estimated actual numbers for this fiscal year, for the current fiscal year. And from those, there's also very few agencies who provides like presentation, like variance calculation between the budget to budget. And if they do, the standard practice is actually to compare the year over year of the budget versus the budget. So I mean, again, those are actually just based on our research, and we followed the standard practice of what other agencies are doing as well. And one of the reasons why we do that presentation as well is if it's budget to budget, the prior year budget or the current year budget is a fixed amount. If you compare it with the estimated actuals, it's actually more like a moving number. So the estimates will change at any point in time. So the presentation or the variance calculations, the dollars and the percentages could change depending on what the estimates would be at the time of the report production. So again, point well taken on that. We are actually just following what the standard practice for government agencies in terms of the presentation. So I think that's pretty much it for the preliminary budget.
I think Director Slotty, you had a question.
Yeah, I just have a question under one of the areas, and that's under water rescue section.
What page are you on now?
I'm on page 150.
150?
Yes. First, I want to say, Chief,
From previous budgets, the realistic overtime projections are right on. I'm very well impressed with that. Before they were pie in the sky, kind of out of projection. And of course, having the revenue projections definitely help what's going on. But the underwater rescue, other than auto aid, mutual aid, and being dispatched by San Mateo County Communications, do we have any MOUs or any SOPs or policies that designate us to coordinate this purpose statement that we have here?
MOUs. I don't know that we have.
Because I remember that Steve Miller's group went and said that we only have the jurisdictional authority up to the shoreline. And here in this purpose statement, it basically says we have the entire bay of wetlands involving any type of flooding. And we were supposed to get a verification on that from the county manager. And we're spending quite a bit of money for auto aid, mutual aid, and having San Mateo County Communications dispatch us as either boat 77 or whatever designation they use for our fire station. So is there anything that we have relative to back up this purpose statement that we have here?
I would have to do some research and get back to you on that. I know we will respond to wherever there's a need, whether we have an MOU or not. And we probably have some kind of formalized agreements with Cal OES and our water rescue team for the OES side of things, but with the others, I don't know. I would have to ask and get back.
Chief, is that purpose statement actually accurate? I think is one of the questions, because I've never paid that much attention to it, but I just read it in more detail, because the last line of it to me is the most accurate, which is water rescue teams for immediate response to natural man-made disasters involving water. And we could have those within our own district. So the idea that we have water rescue, I get where Director Solano is going, which is, we're providing a service, largely much of the expense in prior years has been responding outside the district, some form of mutual aid or just somebody else's jurisdiction. The flip side of it for me is that the purpose statement at the very end of it, covers what I actually care about as the top priority, which is that we have trained water rescue capabilities in our district, in the event that we had a major failure of the dikes, which we've had in the past in East Palo Alto.
Yeah, this is the first time I've actually spent any time reading the purpose statement. I usually go right to the numbers when we're in the budgets, but
that's what I was looking at too.
I didn't mean to put you on the spot,
that's fine. I'm like,
but I was reading this, and I'm, because of the jurisdictional issues that we had brought up in January, in order to find out, one, it's an easy fix for the Board of Supervisors to give us that authority, either under a resolution or a proclamation. So that could be a fix, easy fix by the Board of Supervisors to give us that authority. But now we're kind of hanging out there, and we're spending around $300,000 to support a mutual aid, auto aid, and we'll just dispatch the fire district relative to this stuff. That's what bothers me about that.
Okay, so can I make a recommendation on that? That it's a preliminary look at the budget. We're going to look at it again next month, and I think it's worth addressing the commentary there and to potentially revisit how our purpose statement is written. And one foundational piece of it is, kind of understanding what it's going to cost us to have water rescue, whether we're responding mutual aid or not.
Right.
And as you described, like as an example, the new California training, if we're going to have water rescue, we need to meet the California standards.
Right.
And we need that in our district.
And I'd also like to add too, what the jurisdictional authority is. Let's throw the cat on the table, get the county board of supervisors to resolve it by us working off a 1939 resolution that was prepared by them. And, you know, either give us the authority or not, or pass the authority to the sheriff's office or harbor district or any other entity that wants to take a Palo Alto fire. So, you know, we're dealing with the public safety of the people in East Palo Alto and in Bellhaven, and the people that are along the creek over there in Weekend Acres. So I think it's serious enough where, you know, Stephen Miller's group found out that we have the jurisdictional authority to the shoreline. So we shouldn't even be going out there.
With respect, I don't believe that's what we found.
Well, if you read your report, you'll see it is there.
Well, I'll be happy to go back.
Okay, can I make a suggestion here? I don't think we're going to resolve all of the jurisdictional issues, nor do I think we should try to resolve those as part of the budget process. Because we're going to get a second look at this and be expected in May to approve the preliminary budget and approve a final budget in June. And I just think it's unrealistic to think all those jurisdictional issues would potentially be resolved. But I think we can address the purpose statement and get a better understanding of the cost of the rescue services, water rescue services that would be required just to service the district itself, and have those available on standby, whether we're responding or not.
Well, I kind of disagree. I think we need the actual goals and objectives here relative to whatever that jurisdictional authority is for those rescues.
Robert, go ahead.
So, where do we get this money from to support this particular project?
Or was it, Robert?
Where do we get the money from?
For the water rescue program?
Yeah.
From our general fund.
From the general.
Yes.
And my assumption is that there was and still is a need for this type of service. And the question become one of, I guess, kind of Rob's issue is that the authority comes from our own, this is what we want to do, or did we get some type of authority from the county or some other entity saying, hey, this is what we would like for you to do, and we would like for you to support it?
I don't.
Predates the chief,
Yeah, I know.
20 years probably.
Yeah, my general experience is if there's a need and nobody's filling it, the fire agencies generally will fill in the gaps. Right. So, you know, even if the jurisdictional authority belonged to the sheriff, for example, if they're not providing it and we have residents, citizens, community members that are in need, we're not going to go call the sheriff.
Right.
We're gonna respond and do the best we can. And part of that is actually, yeah, it has developed over time,
I
right?
agree. We're gonna look at this moving forward for next month. Let's just look at the purpose statement.
Yeah. I've made a note on
Thank
there.
you.
As you guys are over the next month, I know this is a lot to digest, and our goal was to get it to you early. If you have questions that you develop over the course of next month, please feel free to reach out to me or Elaine, and that way we can have answers in advance as well of the May meeting.
Any other questions? Everyone?
I have about 5 or 6.
Yeah.
On page 102, this is the general fund budget. I'm not quarreling with the number, but I don't understand under revenue that I'm looking at table 1 here, revenue, other operating. These numbers are kind of varying widely from 2 million, 2.7 million to 8.5 million and stuff. What's going on with that account? Why are those variations there?
Yeah, so the variations, I think this time around, the variation is most likely due to the interest rates or interest income that we receive. Because, in the past, we haven't really had a solid investment portfolio. So now that, we implemented it, we're earning, 5.5% for, our monies basically that we invested. So that's largely basically due to that.
So the drop, what you're saying is, we're gonna get, you think, 8.5 million for this fiscal year, but it's gonna drop because interest rates are gonna drop, is that?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I didn't quite get that.
So Chuck, I'm glad you brought that up, because that was brought up in the finance committee meeting, because the drop, the variance is so big. And so we were surprised too that it was basically interest income, that the whole interest rate environment that we're in.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Yeah, I just wondered why it was so large. Let me ask then about, on page, that one page is turned down here. Let me just get the one. On page 115, this deals with the operating transfers, which, to be honest with you, I don't understand. But there's this huge, again, variation going this year. It's going to be transfer out is under 6 million, and next year it's going to be over 18 million. Why is there a $12 million?
Yeah, so basically it has something to do with, again, the projected revenues and expenditures, because this is actually our balancing account, basically. So whatever the past practice is, whatever our projected revenue for the general fund, less the projected expenditure for a given year. The difference is, we always transfer to the CIP fund at the beginning of the fiscal year, basically, or, at the mid-year report. So that $18 million is due to the fact that now we are trying to basically budget a more realistic number for our revenues. Wherein, in the past, again, it's just basically, we are very, very conservative with, our numbers when it comes to the revenue. That's why in the past, you see, the amended budget or the estimated actual is just like $5.9 million. But that doesn't mean that this $5.9 million is gonna be the actual amount. Because again, if you remember, at the end of the fiscal year, once we actually, close the books. So if it turns out that, we have, let's say, like $10 million more or, $15 million more excess from our revenues over our expenditures, and that's where we actually classify or allocate which one or the amounts to be allocated to the different reserves. And most of them at the end of the year is going to the CIP fund. But at this point, the estimated actual at this time is just 5.9 million, which is the budgeted amount, because we're not yet sure how are we going to allocate those reserves. So at the end of the year, you will probably see a huge amount on this one as well as transfer out of the same.
And this is because we're looking at maybe a $15 million to $18 million additional reserve.
Correct. That's correct.
I see.
Partly driven by using the more realistic estimate for both investment income and property tax revenues.
Correct.
Right. Okay.
So there's going to be a bigger variation because they're using more precise estimates.
Okay. And then let me ask about just the substantive thing, or not substantive, but just a question of what it means on page 116, the next page. And maybe if this is in the facilities report, I can wait for it then, but it talked about a department operations center. What is that? Or is that something that will be discussed in facilities?
No, it can be where.
Well, I'm looking at the bottom, maybe fifth line from the bottom on page 116.
Oh, got it. Sure. This is yes, this is all going to be part of the facilities report, and also, as I had talked about, coming to the board in June with some proposals for this rebuild here. Ultimately, in our plans, we're planning on having a multi-purpose room that will serve as a boardroom, a large training classroom, and a department operations center. That's instead of the old term we used to use was an EOC. It's just more appropriate for a fire district to have a department operations center and allow the cities to have EOCs, and then we support them. But that's what it is. It will be a mixed use room of some sort that allows us multi-functions.
Okay, I just hadn't seen the terminology before.
Sure.
On page 117. I mean, I guess I have two questions on this relates to the apparatus bay door replacement. First of all, I want to ask if we have a reserve tiller, do we have any place where we can actually put that? Does it fit in anywhere?
Trying to think about, yeah, we could put it at station 4. Is adequate space and it's got an extra bay, so yes.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure, because we're planning to have one, and I just wanted to, I didn't think we had space for it.
We have one. And then also, and it's a little bit the cart before the horse, you know, ultimately with our proposed plans out here, I think both options have an apparatus bay for a reserve engine and tiller in kind of the training portion of the building. So there might also be an apparatus bay here.
Okay, we would never leave that out in the elements though, right? Okay. And then this apparatus bay door replacement, I mean, it seems like somebody goofed. I mean, basically the architect goofed. And we've got this $500,000 set of doors that we got to throw away, is what it's implying.
So, yeah, I'll share. Yeah, there, I don't want to blame it on the architect, but there were some goofs, and we realized that we have a space issue and a safety issue with the current doors at station 2. You know, it's possible if the number comes in at $450,000, this number will change and go down. We put it kind of as a placeholder. And initially, you know, we had an issue with the space there anyway. There's a roll-up door right behind the tiller at station 2. And that kind of solved the problem, and that problem still exists on the other 5 doors. So we have 2 options. One is to replace it with those roll-up doors like we have. We had also been told that it's possible that we might be able to reuse the existing doors and have them fold outward. The latest information is that probably isn't true, and this number's high. And if it's in this range, I'll be coming back, and that number will be probably in the $150,000 range for roll-up doors instead of trying to, So
let me ask 2 follow-ups with that then. Will the shake alert still operate the door? Okay, and the second is there any market for these doors? I mean,
we're trying to figure out how we can repurpose it. Do you know?
Yeah. So
you're gonna put them on your house?
No.
The barn.
Yeah, so I met with John today, and he talked to the contractor. We actually can reuse the doors.
Oh, so
we won't have to dispose of them, but what we will have to do is we will need to get new motors to have them open outward. Also new control boxes, and possibly the light fixtures above the door will also have to be relocated. So he's getting a quote on that. He said we will be able to reuse the doors.
Okay.
So that item could
That's
potentially
good.
be
Well,
changed.
hopefully the number changes. I don't know what the bid is, but that's good news for us because they're beautiful doors, and we'd hate to have to whatever surplus them.
Yes, we should have a quote by then.
Awesome. Good. Hopefully that number changes and we can keep those beautiful doors.
but let me say, I mean, normally people don't want to like to talk about mistakes and things like that, but the only way you learn what to do is to talk about it. So I appreciate you putting it in here and so forth.
Happy to be transparent about it and learn from the past so we don't repeat them. So
let me ask something. It's in several places, but on page 19, I'm sorry, 119, it's summarized here under administrative services in this table 15. Board of directors goes up over $200,000, and I know it's for contract services.
we have an election.
We have an election.
Is that what it is?
Yeah, for 2024.
Elections are very expensive.
Okay.
Part of that lunch too.
Okay, thank you. I didn't.
Yeah, every 2 years you'll see a spike in that because of our election rotation.
But the election is in this fiscal year,
November, correct?
November, I'm sorry.
November
You're
of
right.
2024.
Okay, and I'm almost done here. I just had, oh no, it's the same one. Okay, and I'm all done. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else have additional questions? Any public comment on our preliminary budget?
We have no public
Either in the
comment.
room or? Nope, okay. So we'll
Thanks.
move on. Well,
Thanks,
thanks
Elaine.
Elaine for the hard work on
Yeah,
that.
just
And
he's gathered input and really make it as responsive as possible.
We-
Thank you.
we will-
Excellent work, Elaine. Don't leave yet, because there just might be a question on item 8, but maybe.
Yeah.
Okay, we are on to item number 8, which is the resolution authorizing the fire chief to buy a new tiller truck that amount not to exceed 2.5 million.
So let me share kind of how we got here. My plan had been to put a replacement tiller into the budget this year. And the challenge was right now we've become aware that the turnaround time with Pierce Manufacturing is somewhere between 4 and 5 years. It's COVID has just, the supply chain issues just keep on going and everyone's trying to catch up at the same time. So I was going to place it in the budget and then come to realize there really isn't a place in our budget for a future expenditure 4 or 5 years from now. So, and there's some financial reasons why this is being brought to you right now. One of them is that if we get approval to commit to this contract before April 30th, we save approximately $29,000. And then we have if we don't do that, then we've got a 4 or 5 month window to sign. And I don't know what happens after the end of August or September. I will share that we went through some numbers, which is why I kept Elaine here, just trying to make a decision on whether we should prepay for the equipment, which is an option, or to pay when it gets delivered. And for that, I put my crack staff on it, aka Elaine, and had him do some calculations. It was about a $300,000 savings discount. But the way we have with our new investment policy and Elaine managing it, I don't know what the determination was, but I think it was, how much would we be advantaged by paying it on delivery? It was,
So based on our calculation sheet, the most conservative assumptions that we have, we're better off paying it at delivery, and we'll still save about roughly
Better off what?
Yeah, so if we are going to pay it upon delivery, so based on our cost calculations, we're gonna save roughly about $92,000.
So just to be clear, pay on delivery versus prepaying.
Correct.
Because some value
But-
of money,
but-
you can invest. that
Put
to-
differently is we are better off investing the money
Correct.
than taking advantage of their prepayment
Prepayment,
offer.
yeah.
We will come out ahead by
At the high
investing the
interest
money.
rates. once the
Yeah.
interest rates are
Even with
going
the
down.
drop, he used conservative estimates
Yeah.
for it. The finance committee reviewed
We
this.
looked at all, yeah.
I'm only Elaine.
So that's actually what the finance committee recommended, is just pay on delivery
Yeah, right.
and invest that money.
But place the order.
Yeah. Because there's a 4 to 5 year wait.
Do you have to make a deposit when you place the order?
No.
Just a commitment?
Yeah, that was the oddity of
Mhm.
this proposal, which is authorizing the chief to enter a contract for something that's not in the budget. Although I suspect budget-wise, it should show up somewhere as a future liability.
Correct.
It'll show up in the budget as a future liability, but it doesn't affect our immediate budget.
Right now.
Director Brinson, did you have a question about the numbers?
No, I was just gonna say, I thought you were bringing up initially that it wasn't in the budget, but according to the accounting procedures, we can't expense it until it's delivered anyway. So it doesn't matter when we pay for it. It only matters when we put it into service.
We just have to record the liability because it's a contractual obligation.
Yeah, whether we pay for it or don't pay for it, as long as we commit to it, we still have to record it as a liability.
Right, exactly.
Right, but I mean, this item is to have the chief move forward with it so that we're in the queue, essentially.
So, and just to share with the rest of the board, what this will do is help us stay on track with our normal replacement
Schedule.
policy and schedule for that. And it's weird to look 4 or 5 years out to figure it out, but now's the time for us to act in order for us to timely replace the other apparatus.
I think,
So
I think it also is good as part of policy or procedure planning we've been talking about it. You need to memorialize certain things so that 5 years down the road, if we're not here, chief may not be here, where do they go find that information about, especially when it comes time to take possession of it. So it's, I think it's good policy.
Do we have a motion to adopt the resolution?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, I heard it.
Well, I'll move to adopt, the resolution authorizing the fire chief to award a contract to Golden State Fire Apparatus for the purchase of one 2028 Pierce tiller ladder truck in an amount not to exceed 2.5 million.
We have a second.
And I second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any additional discussion?
I wanted to just ask about the whole thing. I mean, I have not been fond of what Pierce does and their practices and so forth. I mean, we wouldn't be required to accept this early if they were done with it in 2 years, right?
5 years.
that's a good question. I mean, if they're somehow they ramped up their production and there was, I honestly don't know the answer.
Okay, well, related to that, if there's supply chain issues and those are resolved, it's possible the prices could even drop. So this is something that I hope when you negotiate this, you'll negotiate a lower price if in fact that's what happens in the future, right?
So I'll ask that question. Yes.
I mean, all we're saving now is 1% by committing to it now. It's almost insignificant. But if you have to order it in 6 months anyway, it doesn't matter. You might as well save the money for 6 months worth.
And I don't know what's going to happen to the supply chain. Hopefully they get it cleared up. But not, I mean, to be honest with you, not so quickly that we end up. We don't need a new filler in 2 or 3 years. Yeah, like 4 or 5. We have to trust that that's accurate. Yeah, that's the way it certainly is for everybody right now.
And then we're going to surplus the Quint.
Yes. Yeah. And I didn't put an estimation in there because I don't know what the value of it will be, but it should be pretty valuable. It's it's in pretty good condition. Like I said, we'll see. And those estimations that we've given the board in the past haven't turned out to be entirely accurate. You know, as we were replacing the entire engine fleet.
And there's no thought that the Quint is still a lemon in any way.
I haven't heard that. Yeah.
It was for like a year or two, but I didn't know.
This is what software issue?
The electronics. Okay.
All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second? All in favor?
Public comment.
Oh, public comment, sorry.
We have none.
No public comment. I keep forgetting because we never have any. Okay, all in favor of adopting the resolution?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, so that carries unanimously. The next item was the restating policies associated with updated board of directors policy. I'll remind the board that when Nicole presented the policy, we voted and agreed on the new board policy. And she had said that part of the strategy was to move a bunch of various pieces out of the policy, make them separate standalone documents. And that is what is being proposed here.
Thanks, Dr. Bloom. All I'll add is just to underscore that this is, I think, an administrative approval that we're seeking in order just to preserve the status quo of the district's policies in the aftermath of your having approved a streamlined board procedure manual. So if you, in order to ensure that the set of policies that used to be embedded in the manual continue to live on, just would appreciate your voting to restate or reaffirm those policies so that there's no doubt that they still exist. If you don't like the policies and you want to change them, I would suggest that you still vote to approve them and then turn your attention as a secondary step to amending them as you see fit. So that's really all I have to say about it.
Do we have a motion to adopt it?
I'll move to adopt the
And
policy.
do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion, we have a second, and discussion.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. I agree with that in general. In reading these, there's some places where there's some typos and there's some mistakes. Have you edited this, or you just took them verbatim?
This is verbatim. Our charge was to create a new board manual. And I think we even talked about it and we're steered away from getting into these policies at all. So they are just verbatim of what had already always existed.
Okay, well, let me just ask the question, and that's fine, but at some point, I assume that we're gonna want to correct them or fix them or whatever.
It's complete, if you direct someone, me or someone to take that on, I'd be happy to do it.
Well, my only question is really, in what format, what forum should we do that? That was it. Do you want, I don't particularly want to do it tonight, but
No, I think the way that should happen is if there are directors that believe some of those policies need to be revisited, we should put them up.
It's grammar, and punctuation,
Yeah,
it's
but-
not just excellence.
But whether it's grammar, punctuation, or substance doesn't really matter. We should bring it up at whatever point the director wants those addressed, we can put it on the list of future agenda topics. And then we can have the rationale for that at the second meeting. And we can vote whether we're going to just have a discussion on it and approve some change.
Which is, I think, what Steve's saying, we should just do.
I think
the only thing on the only thing up for vote right now is to adopt our old policies as these addendums as noted in the motion.
Well, I do want to address this thing, Chelsea. Their grammar, I think we need to kind of have space, clean it up. We can address it in form, right? The process in form, but I think what Chuck is talking about needs to be cleaned up before we just put it out there. But we address it now, we approve it, it now goes out to, I assume, the general public.
So I think it's important that we have these policies in place. So my recommendation would be that we approve these policies in place. And then it sounds like we have a reasonable consensus of the board to have the legal team go out and do grammatical corrections on it and then put it in front of the board for a second time. But in the meantime, I think we need these policies in place. We should not be running without them.
question, please, just in terms of getting the sense of the board. Am I hearing that you want us just to focus on form and substance? You want us to raise issues that occur to us, or just leave this for another day?
Save the substance for a later day and focus on the grammatical corrections.
Sure, I mean, that's fine, we would be happy. Okay, we're expert grammarians.
When so authorized. Okay, any other discussion on this motion? Okay, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, so that passes unanimously. The next item is to nominate Director Corrali to continue her role serving on the San Mateo Local Agency Formation Commission, LAFCO, board as a special district representative. She filled the open seat that came up during the year last year, and the recommendation is that we go ahead and nominate her again to continue in that role, representing not Menlo Park Fire Protection District specifically, but being the special district representative. So do we have a motion to approve that? I will move that we approve the nomination of Director Corrali. Do we have a second? Okay, so we have a motion, we have a second, and now we can have discussion.
Yeah, there was an email. Michelle, is this the email that came, something else that you sent us regarding?
No, I think that is it. If I'm not mistaken, maybe I'm wrong.
No, that's not it.
No, that's not it. I'm sorry, you're correct.
We received an email public comment regarding this item.
Oh, okay.
And it'll be reflected in the minutes for next month.
And it was provided to the directors by email.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Well, it's almost like a moot point for me. I think that taken in the context of the individual sent the email and the status of what's going on with the sanitation district in East Palo Alto that, I think the information that I saw in there was, really not founded, you know, everyone's entitled to their opinion about things, but I think how much is politically motivated by the individual themselves and their position on the sanitation district, kind of make them really suspect in terms of, you know, why they would send it out and why, I mean, they're making that motion and trying to influence a lot of people to not to resolve sanitation district. And so this is the political motivation that I see that this person is trying to stop, not to have like less one vote that will be made in favor of having it in terms of the vote that took place already. So I'm opposed to that letter, and with it, intent is trying to cover. So just want that to be on record.
Yeah, so I'll tell you how I kind of looked at it, because I don't have enough knowledge of the actual issue that was there, but I looked at it kind of a different level, which is just because some of these are representative of the special districts does not mean that they're always going to vote or agree with each individual special district and their desires or their desired outcome at LAFCO. You know, that's not the role. They're a representative of the special district to have the eyes and ears of the special district. But I don't think that predisposes it to say that individual always has to vote in favor of the special district. They're a voting member. We're putting somebody there with appropriate skill and other things to make analysis and as the representative for the special districts. So I kind of just looked at it from a perspective of not knowing the issue, but also knowing that, you know, it's not the role of the representative to always side, you know, on a predetermined basis with what the special districts want. Not the most articulate way of saying it, but.
Good, yeah. I read the email and I did read the hearing, and supposedly there's another hearing in May also. The thing that concerned me was that the city of East Palo Alto can contract those services to West Bay Sanitation. And there's a section of the sewer district there that's in Menlo Park. And those people that are in Menlo Park will not have a voting say relative to what their sewer service is. And that's why I think LAFCO made a bad decision by doing that.
Yeah, so I want to cut off the discussion about whether LAFCO made a good decision or a bad decision.
Yeah, but it's part of my discussion as the reason why I'm going to vote the way I am.
Well, you can vote how you want to vote, but no, hold on a second. Let me explain my second. No, I'm going to.
I want
as
the reasoning.
As president of the board, I'm going to take a leadership position on this topic. We are not here to arbitrate in this meeting today what decisions LAFCO has or has not made. We are here to discuss the nomination Director Crawley to continue her role, for us to nominate her to continue her role as the special district representative. That's what we're here to discuss. So it's fine if you don't agree with the LAFCO decision, and if that bleeds over to your decision on how you want to vote, that's fine. But in this meeting itself, we should not be arbitrating what LAFCO has or has not decided.
I think that's part of my decision.
Okay, that's fine.
And I can state it as such.
You can.
And you can hit me again with the
Director Bernstein?
Yeah, I'm not going to support the motion either. I happen to live in the district, and I have the feeling that Director Crowley in this case, first of all, she led me to believe when I voted last time to have her be a representative there, she promised me that she would give fair shake to special district, which I don't think she did. And so I don't think she merits a reappointment, and I don't think this board should be, in a sense, blessing her position by recommending a nomination. We will lose any voice in our rates in there. But completely, she never argued or defended or represented special districts in any way whatsoever. And I just don't think that she is an appropriate representative for us. And I think in some ways I'm looking for a more long-term representative, somebody who will be on this board or other boards for a long period of time. And I think she's made it clear that she's looking for her next elected position. And so I'm going to vote no on the motion to nominate her.
Okay, any other discussions? So we have a motion and we have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
Okay, so we have a 3-2 vote approving the nomination of Director Crawley.
Director Bloom, it's important for the record to state who voted yes and who voted no when there's not a unanimous vote.
Okay.
So if you want,
I can
do that, or the board clerk, but we need a public listing of who voted which
Why
one.
don't we just do a roll call vote and then you'll have it for your record.
Director Bernstein,
Nay.
Director Jones,
Yes.
Director Crawley,
Aye.
Director Solano,
Nay.
Director Bloom.
Aye.
Thank you.
Does that satisfy your?
Thank you very much for
Yes.
doing
Yes, and I would like my explanation to be in the record to say that I had the concerns that the residents of Menlo Park, if West Bay Sanitation does take over, and it's contracted through East Palo Alto, the city of East Palo Alto, that they will not have a voice as to any type of rate increases or any type of governing relative to the sanitary district. Thank you, Michelle.
Michelle will record that.
Thank you.
Okay. So moving on, approve moving the June 18th board meeting to June 11th, 2024. The foundation of that request is that two of us, myself and Director Crawley, have wedding conflicts with the June 18th date. These were, I think for both of us, not known at the time that we were establishing the preliminary schedule. So I will actually be on an airplane on the 18th heading to Europe for the wedding. So that is the request. I know last time when we made the change for this meeting, there was short notice. This time we put it on as soon as it became apparent. And so
I'll make a motion to approve moving the June 18th, 2024 board meeting to June 11th, 2024.
do we have a second?
I'll do a second, but I need to have a.
Okay, I'll second it while Robert is checking his calendar. So it's moved by Director Crawley and seconded by Director Bloom. And we'll give the board members a chance to double check their calendars.
What's the JD?
June 11th.
11 instead of June 18th, 1 week prior. Director Bernstein.
I just wanted to thank you for doing it earlier. I think that I think when two directors are going to be gone, it's a more cogent argument. Although the remaining three of us could push all sorts of things through, so it's a lost opportunity for the minority.
All right. Any other comments? Okay, so all in favor of moving the June 18th meeting to June 11th? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so we have a unanimous decision on that. We don't need a roll call. The next item, I'm gonna put on my president's hat again for this one, to remind, and you have a copy of the new policy of how this is supposed to work. We had 3 items that were listed in the proposed agenda items from the March 19th meeting. So what is supposed to happen today is simply giving the director that made the motion or put the item on the list a chance to explain what it is. And then we're not here to arbitrate or decide the issue. And then we're just basically voting that, yes, we will have that on the future list. And if I'm not mistaken, because I'm still new to this policy too, it would actually get voted, the item itself would get voted on at the next meeting. Is that correct?
No, this is the next meeting.
This is the next meeting.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is the one where,
You're gonna decide whether to put this item
On
on
the
the
agenda.
agenda, and if you vote yes, it will go on the
Okay.
agenda, not necessarily the next meeting's agenda.
right,
It can
but
be
we're
a
not going to
future
debate the
agenda.
issue here today.
Correct, it's
Okay.
just whether or not we will include it in the
Yes.
future.
So,
What are
so in that spirit, I was the one that added the first item to the list. There is a copy of the letter that I received from Supervisor Canepa, and asking that the board also adopt a resolution similar to what the County Board of Supervisors did to declare loneliness a public health crisis. And the reason I suggested it for our agenda is that I believe, just out of respect for the supervisor asking us to consider it, that we should consider it at one of our meetings. Do we want to vote on each of these individually? Is that a good?
Yes.
I think that's the
Yeah.
best approach.
Do we need a
Okay.
motion?
So yes, we would need a motion.
I'll make a motion that we consider the request by San Mateo County Board of Supervisor David Canepa that the board adopt a resolution to declare loneliness a public health crisis.
And I'll second it.
Okay.
Do you have any further discussion on that item? I'll teach you to it.
I do have a question though. Did he send material or is there
The
something?
letter is
Just
in
the
the.
letter requesting it.
But just the letter. I mean, I read the letter.
Yeah.
I just wondered if there was anything more.
It was a letter addressed to me as president.
Okay.
And the resolution.
There's a resolution.
Okay.
And the
And the
resolution.
resolution.
Right.
that They're asking us.
But there's no staff report from someplace or anything.
It's purely a discretionary item from the board, but to be considered by the full board, if so approved.
Quick question from staff, AKA the fire chief, would you, it's pretty low drag for us, would you look at that on the next board agenda?
We'll decide that when we do the agenda,
Okay,
as with all these items.
Okay.
Okay, so we have a motion, we have a second, all in favor?
all right.
Aye. Any opposed?
Opposed.
Okay,
opposed?
so it's a 4-to-1 vote with all directors except Director Bernstein approving, Director Bernstein voting nay. I don't think we need a roll call. That one. Okay, the next one was a request by Director Bernstein, discuss preparing a disaster plan for residents of the district. So Director Bernstein, the floor is yours to explain what you're looking for in this item.
Yes, I want to be clear because the chief made available to me a disaster plan for the professionals, the first responders. But I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about needing a plan for the district for the 3 or 4 or 5 major scenarios: flood, earthquake, hazardous material spill, and so forth, that would tell people where to go, where to meet, what to do, and where they can get information and so forth.
Okay, so folks focused on the community disaster plan is what you're asking for.
Yes, the community residents,
Right.
not what the professionals should do.
Okay, so we've heard the description of it. Is there a motion to approve this for a future board meeting?
I'd like to make a motion, that motion.
Is there a second? Any discussion
I,
without arbitrating the issue?
without arguing,
Or without debating the.
yeah, well, I can say if it passes, I'll say I think the community plan goes a little bit more deeper than just someone sitting in the office, coming up with a plan, but that has to do with a neighborhood action plan. And each neighborhood, you really need to kind of dig in that themselves, and that's a lot of work that has to be coordinated, I think, with the city and the individual institutions that are representing themselves as various organizations. So that's where I have a really discomfort at this point.
Anybody have any clarifying questions?
Well, Gary, may I ask me, we have the emergency travel committee advisory group ad hoc, are they going to report as to what they have done so far and, you know, like,
Yes.
like, is there going to be a format for grants and aids for some of these volunteer groups? Is there going to be a criteria for evaluation? When they do submit whatever funding that they want, is it going to be fire district based versus there's different communities or their cities? Has it gotten that far?
Yeah, so the ad hoc committee we had the final discussion with staff, and it is on the ad hoc committee to now summarize those findings back and agree with staff on kind of a ad hoc committee report / policy. That is predominantly in my queue because I was the keeper of the notes, and we're hoping to report on that. I'm hoping for the May meeting, but it may slip to the June meeting. No, but so yes, the board will see a report.
It kind of spins off what Chuck is asking.
It does spin off of it, but I think what Director Bernstein is actually requesting is different than what the ad hoc committee is focused on. But the appropriate time for scheduling relative to Director Bernstein's request would be after the ad hoc committee report. But I think what Director Bernstein's requesting from my lens is reasonable. And it's different than what the ad hoc committee is actually working on. We're not doing a disaster plan for the community. We're establishing EPREP policy
For the fire
district.
Yeah, let me say though, just to be clear, I don't know that this has to be something that we, you know, bring down from the mountain here and deliver to the people. I think that I'm talking about something, it could even be on one page as a first as a start and evolve over time, and it could actually meld in with whatever the EPREP policy committee is working on. I just think that it's something we've needed for, I don't know, 40 years, and it's something we need now, and we're getting earthquakes in New York City. And it just, for us to not have an emergency plan, I just think it's negligence on our part.
So let's have the vote on it. If the vote is approving this, we will have that opportunity at a future meeting to discuss what the plans could be, how it's going to be put together, what it looks like, and who does the work.
And that could be after the EPREP ad hoc.
It could be, yeah, but that will be decided whenever this goes on the agenda.
Right, between you and Chief and Rob.
Right. Okay, so we have a motion. I forget who made the motion now.
I did.
Oh, Director Bernstein. I think Robert was Rob was the second, I'm sorry. Okay, I'm getting all the names mixed up here. So we have a motion, we have a second, so all in favor of having this on a future agenda.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Nay.
Nay.
Okay, so we have a 4-to-1 vote of all directors approving except Director Jones, who voted against the proposal. Okay, the next item was a request by Director Solano to discuss the district's PISA rating, and I will let Director Solano explain what this agenda item would be.
Thank you, Gary. No, I basically, when Virginia and I came on this board, our fire district was a class 3. And during our tenure, we went from a class 3 to a class 2. And a lot of it dealt with the different types of training that we had. And I think, you know, is a class 1 chief attainable by our agency? Is it something that
we shouldn't be discussing the item? Well, you're simply explaining you want to discuss ISO ratings.
You're right.
And the possibility that we can somehow increase it. But we don't want the chief to be responding and starting the debate.
Well, I want it to be a successful measure as a class 3, because now we're a class 2, and I think we should be a class 1.
So we went from, just so I understand, we went from 3 to 2, and you want to discuss the reason for the discussion is discuss how we would move from a 2 to a 1.
To a 1.
Okay. Okay. Do we have a motion on this item?
I'll move to
do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. And do we have any other discussion?
I just want to emphasize that I think This is very timely, given the number of insurance companies that are canceling insurance policies for people.
Okay, so we have a motion, we have a second. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Oh, we actually got something unanimously approved. For future agenda.
We all want to be number one.
Okay, and now we have the opportunity, being mindful of impact on board time and staff requirements for new agenda items, whether anybody has additional new proposed agenda items that simply go on the list, we're not discussing it at all. Okay, hearing going once, twice, 3 times, hearing none, we will move on to reports. Committee reports, starting with human resources.
We did not meet.
Okay, and facilities, we did meet. Robert.
We did.
Y'all did a great report, Robert.
Well, I can't take all the credit. It's a team effort, and my team helped put the information together. So all I did was copy and paste. But the meeting was really good. I think we were really moving in advance in this process along kind of understanding what our role as a committee, and 2, looking at all of the different projects or proposed projects, and particularly the Station 1, what is necessary in order to get across the finish line within a certain period of time. Some of the things that we have accomplished, I thought we did a good job in terms of looking at, talking about at the meeting. There was the site layout that was brought to us. We saw both the option A and B, as I've noted here. One with the administration building and underground parking. B was a site layout that showed with the building itself, without the administration building and without the underground parking. The committee also saw some preliminary initial sketch of Fire Station 1, which was quite dramatic, quite colorful. And we still, I think at some point that those drawings are the information going to come on the board to take a look at, but when, I think we still haven't gotten around to figuring out when it may happen. And plus, I think we still have some more work to kind of really understand about the design itself. From what I understand about, once you put putting the skin, as I say, on the building, that skin will cost a certain amount of money, and I don't know if all of that was taken into consideration in the initial budget that's there. So that's further information we have to feed out. The committee, the committee also looked at 2 budget scenarios. One with the administration building and underground parking. That cost is in the preliminary estimate was around $117 million. And the budget without the administration building and underground parking, that cost was around $94.5 million.
These are architect estimates.
These are architect estimates, so we haven't really narrowed down to the degree. And I think part of being able to kind of look at, as the chief mentioned earlier, and talking to somebody explaining about what this Station 1, what the building is going to look like, what the room is going to look like, and what amenities going to go with it, because those costs will be added to the budget also. Some of our current activities that we continue to look at, which has happened, or staff have reached out, I think, for real estate agent to get an estimate on 170 Middlefield, and as well as the auxiliary building right next door. Try to understand what that will look like potentially if we wanted to sell. Staff is also reaching out to an arborist to get estimates on tree removal as well as replanting of trees. they get renewed. We also, this is also going out for a geotech firm to get soil tested. So we can see what's on the ground here at Station 61. The follow-up activity, we didn't get a chance to get around to looking at, we had the laundry list of things that we talked about, or items that we wanted to continue to try to look at and prioritize within the scope of work that we have defined for the committee to look at. So we still have to look at that list of items and put them in categories, prioritizing. We also we need to determine administration and whether administration is moving or not. That's a biggie, I think, and I think there's many factors that's going to be coming into play in kind of making that decision. As well as the training tower. I think there is going to be a training tower. How high it's going to be and where it's going to be located is something that still need to be kind of assessed. We still need to determine whether development costs are realistic and determine when to present it, and when I say it, the development costs to the board. There's still, like say, work that still needs to be done in terms of developing those costs and understanding, so bring that to the board. Because there are phases that we are looking at in terms of trying to, those phases are various phases that we need to try to start bringing to the board so that it doesn't become one total package that is brought and we spend the next 3 hours or 4 hours trying to unravel all of them. So we still got to work out those phases and we need to bring things to the board. Some other things that determine the estimate fire district staffing flow. Because that's going to have to do a lot to do with spacing, not only at your station 2, but at your other stations that we were in the process of as well. And plans, project phasing, finance phasing, that's going to be the biggie. And part of being able to kind of get an understanding of how our financing is shaping up or is looking like is going to, in terms of a 5-year projection or even a 10-year projection, and you kind of understand, taking all the projects under consideration and we want to develop rehab and understand what that dollar amount is going to look like over time, and how we can actually finance. And I think that's part of some of what the finance committee is kind of poking at this point in time. Everything else is in progress. So I don't know if Chief, Gary has anything you might want to add to that.
Yeah, the only thing, 2 things I would just add quickly is when I mentioned that it was an architecture's pricing, what normally happens, as John described as John Hitchcock, is that at some point the plans are far enough along that they can actually get a true cost estimator that does construction cost estimation for a living, and that number would become dramatically more accurate later in the phase with that cost estimator. And then second is we still will need the numbers as pointed out in the current activities item 1 to understand, kind of an estimated value for the existing structures, because that impacts whether we would move everything to this location or run a kind of a two location facility, keeping the current 170 Middlefield facility.
Great. Nothing to add. I think also in terms of looking at a development schedule, and try to be as comprehensive as possible, we're still looking to try to do something with Station 3, 77,
5,
and 5, and possibly some minor work over at the warehouse. And those numbers at some point need to kind of come into play
And so that we can look at the total dollar amount that we're looking at to rehab and to develop, so that we can truly look at a number that we can either finance itself, because 117 million is, I mean, I know we got a little bit of money right now into the CIP budget, but you know, that can get wiped out real quick with, you know, almost with one project in and of itself. Then what? Then how do we finance the rest of it? So that's the $1 million question we gotta come to grips with. And that will be done over phases. Like I said, to me, there's 5 different phases we're going through. And right now, we are in the, still in the community development concept phase, where we're gathering information so that we can kind of pull it all together so making some really concrete decisions on site locations for different project, different departments on you know, what the building overall skin is going to look like and how much that's going to cost. From my experience, I do know when you start dealing with wood, you know, the type of wood, it has to be such a ongoing maintenance to that you know, that has to be programmed into operating costs over time too as well. So.
Yeah, I was going to say that was one thing you had not mentioned yet until just now, which is the other factor that the committee's kind of surfaced is making sure we understand the operating cost of the new facility. You know, from a kind of monthly annual perspective, it's obviously going to be, well, I shouldn't say, I won't pre-guess it. It could be that the degradation of this facility continues to eat up more money than the cost of operating a new facility, but we won't know that until we're further down. But the committee did talk about the need to have operating cost estimates to go along with the capital investments.
Someone told me years ago, worked at this is a project development. Either or you build a Taj Mahal, or you build a structure that's gonna be nice and everybody feel good about it. And we all want to build that Taj Mahal, but it looks good and it may look good. And there are different ways to make it look as good as the Taj Mahal, but different type of treating of different materials that is used.
So we're going to build a virtual Taj Mahal.
Yeah, we got one going right. I like that. I like the one we saw. That was great.
Virtual tin.
Yeah. When you see the virtual one that's up already, you like it.
Let's open up to questions of the director, Director Bernstein.
I have a couple of questions. Have the issues that of having a reservoir and some of that pump station, have those been resolved or?
You've asked me to jump in when you've gone beyond what's on the agenda. This was just characterized as a committee report, and it seems to me for the last few minutes you've been discussing the issue, not just reporting on the committee. So I'll just share that observation as requested.
Okay. So it sounds like the recommendations, we should move on.
Not resolved yet.
It's not, the short answer is it's not resolved.
Well, there are some issues he brought up that I think are important for, they won't take just a very quick thing. You mentioned there's a tree problem here. Are we talking about 200-year-old oak trees, or are we talking about some little?
We don't know all of the tree issues, the trees that based on the plan that needs to come down. I think that's, we got to assess it. That's why the arborist is going out and trying to make that assessment. And then from there, it'll come back to.
I have the shorter answer to that.
Okay.
The budget that the board previously approved for the chief includes the arborist doing a preliminary tree report, and it includes the initial geotechnical work to understand how we can factor those things into our cost model down the road.
And is there any thought been given, or did you discuss at the meeting just taking station 4 and just dropping the same floor plan in?
Won't work.
Yeah, it won't work. But now we're definitely off the topic of the committee reporting. This is going to be, the one thing I would say is this is going to be a relatively long journey. This is not going to be a one meeting journey. So there'll be opportunity to, as this continues to evolve, to hear what's been considered and what hasn't through the reports. And if necessary, we'll put it on the agenda. Eventually, the whole thing has to go on the agenda.
And I think we need to go on the agenda in phases.
Yeah.
Right.
Because there's a lot to this, and that's what at our next meeting we'll probably sit down and talk and look at, you know, what is it? When do we bring all of our first phase of information to the board? When would that be appropriate? So that you can at least see that, discuss it, and then take input from the board at that point, some of the thoughts you may have, and then move on.
Okay, I'm going to close discussion on this and move on to the finance report. Virginia.
Well, so pretty much everything on tonight's agenda was approved, and that's what the finance committee recommended, and we appreciate approval of that and hope that it helps the chief and Francine move forward the next year.
Okay.
Do you have anything to add?
No, I have nothing to add. It's the finance committee pretty much got duplicated. We obviously had a much longer discussion with the auditor.
Yes.
And a much deeper dive into the preliminary budget, but it did all get presented here.
Yeah, and I'm glad that we're really using this new system so that we have multiple look-sees on the budget.
Yeah. Okay, liaison reports. First one is my town of Atherton. I did attend the meeting. Lots of things discussed. The thing that was relevant to what we do is there was a discussion about safety on Atherton Avenue relative to bike traffic and pedestrian traffic going along Atherton Avenue. And they are going to start the planning process for reconfiguring Atherton Avenue to have bike lanes. So that's just a safety related matter. And then the second thing is, I would just remind everybody, Atherton does have its Earth Day, April 21st from 11 to 3. And the Menlo Park Fire Protection District will be participating through Chief Johnson's group. That is my report on the town of Atherton as to what was relevant for this group. City of East Palo Alto. Mr. Jones.
And I'm in.
Okay. City of Menlo Park.
Nothing to report.
County of San Mateo Districts 3 and 4.
Yeah, I actually.
I always go the wrong way.
It's 3 and 4, but really, the Board of Supervisors had their meeting on March 26th, and the big item was the Measure K funds and how they were going to be allocated. And I mean, I don't want to go into all of the details, but I mean, overall, there were $110 million that needed to be allocated. 75.5 million are going to go into ongoing services to support existing programs like Life Moves or the big, what is it, the education programs, you know, so basically children, families, and seniors. $34.5 million will be available for funding Notice of Funding Opportunity, also known as NOFO. So San Mateo County received 315 applications seeking $251 million total, but really that exceeded the $34.5 million available funds for NOFO projects. And the board looked at they had criteria to select, you know, who would be considered, because out of that, like 13 are up for negotiations, and there's one request for an RFP, which is Thrive, and the rest was pending further review. But the allocated funds as they are right now would be $15 million going towards homelessness and housing, $16 million for children, families, and seniors, and $3.5 million for emergency preparedness. So 3.5 million. Right, so
the total of
35.5 million, 34.5 million. So those are, well, so let me just make it clear, Gary. So 34.5 million is for those agencies and nonprofits that submitted a request. So the remaining 75.5 is going to go to existing services. So I mean, the report is really long. But you know, they focused on a lot of for emergency preparedness, like the unincorporated areas, like Honda Fire Brigade or Coast Site Search, you know, that kind of thing. I don't even think we submitted anything for that. So so anyway,
the $3.5 million is really the rest of the allocation for the NOVO funds at this point. And so I can go, it's all on their website, and the links to, you know, who submitted a request, who's under review, who's, you know, asked, who's been requested to be negotiated with the county manager or his designee. So the outcome is going to be decided at a future meeting at this point, but the 75.5 million is going to go towards the ongoing services to support existing programs.
Yeah, thank you. San Mateo Pre-Hospital.
Did not meet.
Okay. Do they have a meeting on the schedule?
Sometime in May. I think 24th, 25th.
All right. Ad hoc committee reports. Virginia.
We kind of covered it.
Yeah.
You know, we're still working on it. We're still, I think it's now kind of in staff's hands too, and then we'll just bring something to the board.
It's my hands.
Or your hands, sorry.
It's my disorganized spreadsheet on.
We still have to work with staff to do a final before we bring it to the board, and then we can, you know, at that time afterwards, look at the proposed agenda item like Director Blumstein.
Yeah, I think the summary of it is we've discussed the list of issues that we had wanted to discuss with staff. Extensively, over 3 to 4 different meetings now.
Yeah.
And so it's a matter of taking those notes and then converting those notes into kind of a draft preparedness policy.
Yeah, that's where we are now.
Yeah.
But it's not as if we haven't talked about any of this before.
Okay, reports, requested directors. Anybody have anything? Go ahead.
So, the LAFCO board met on March 20th, the third Wednesday of the month. And actually also the budget committee met. And the focus of the LAFCO board right now is just kind of sifting through the Baltimore Police Protection District. But I'm also on the budget committee. And so the budget committee has put together a schedule of public agencies that might be in the line of an MSR, Municipal Services Review. And some of the talk from LAFCO staff is that they're gonna at some point look at the fire districts, because the last time any of the fire districts were looked at was probably like 10 to 12 years ago. And so they're not picking on anyone, because every city, a lot of special districts go through this kind of review. So I just wanted to put that out there. You know, and there are other cities too that are undergoing this, but anyway, I just wanted to put it out there because it is part of the schedule that we're trying to finalize. I mean, it's kind of been finalized, but we have another budget committee coming up. That's pretty much all I have.
Okay. Any other directors have anything to report?
Yesterday, I did the building together with the firefighters off Ivy Drive, and got as far as putting the fence up.
Certified fence builder now.
Well, I don't know. I'm a certified picker out of different tree trunks. But, so it's great, Chief, that you let some of the on-duty people work it. It's really good. I mean, the lady was very thankful that they were out there helping. That's all I have.
My experience from the past on those kinds of things in the district is we have some incredibly talented craftsmen who work in the fire district. You know, so they have their fire job, but they also have some pretty phenomenal skills when it comes to construction.
The fence went up really.
Yeah, I bet it did. Yeah, it's been kind of an experience.
How do they do that? Do they remain in line, or are they last to be called?
They will remain available on scene, and if they get an emergency call, they go. They drop.
So they're in, the engine is right there.
Yeah, 77 left and did a call when we were doing the fence.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. President's report, I have nothing additional to report other than check yourself for all your mosquito bites. They've been flowing in through the open door here pretty readily. And I have nothing else to report, but before we adjourn, I'll ask if there's any last public comment. This is the final catch-all.
Just
None? Okay, so I will go ahead and adjourn the meeting. Next scheduled meeting is May 21st of 2024. And just a reminder to everybody to update their calendars for the June meeting. Thank you very much.
9:29. Michelle, 9:29.
Oh, yeah. I would want it.
You want it?
Are you going? Let's.